What if everything you've been told about success, progress, and the future was a lie? We're taught from the moment we can walk that life is a race toward achievement, toward accumulation, toward some future moment when everything will finally fall into place. But what if that future never comes? What if the endless chase is nothing more than an illusion, one that keeps us trapped, distracted, and disconnected from what truly matters? Look around. Society glorifies the hustle, praises ambition, and dismisses stillness as laziness. If you're not building, grinding, and pushing forward, you're labeled as unmotivated, as if simply being isn't enough. The art of living in the present isn't just undervalued, it's actively discouraged. But here's the truth. It's not reckless to enjoy life. In fact, it's essential. Because when people don't know how to be, they become restless, resentful, and destructive. They take, they manipulate, they control, obsessed with power and wealth, all because they never learned the simple, effortless joy of being present. The art of living in the eternal now isn't taught in our schools. And why? Because society sees it as reckless, irresponsible, something only fools and dreamers indulge in. It's not irresponsible at all. In fact, it's everyone's duty to enjoy life, because if you don't, you become a problem. You grow resentful, frustrated, maybe even destructive. You take from others, not just things, but their peace. You try to control everything and everyone, obsessed with power and influence, and all because you never learned the simple, free art of being present in the moment. It really doesn't take an awful lot of energy to maintain a human life. If you really consider what you need to eat, what you need to wear, how much housing you have to have, it comes down to something quite simple. And the simpler, the more you have the capacity to enjoy watching a raindrop crawl down a window. But if you sit and watch a raindrop slide down a window and think, "Wow, look at that," people will call you crazy. Why are you wasting time? Don't you have something more important to do? And by important, they usually mean something stressful, something chaotic, something that adds to the noise of the world. But the very mindset that dismisses the beauty of a simple raindrop is the same one fueling the stress, division, and trouble we see everywhere today. Society tells you that you're worthless, barely even human, unless you're constantly changing things, interfering, or making progress. We confuse growth with progress, as if life only matters when a big project is in motion, when you're grinding, hustling, and pushing forward. If you're not chasing the future, they call you lazy, unambitious, a waste of potential. But maybe the real waste is never stopping to just be. People say that if you're always working toward the future, you must be a little crazy. So they don't. Instead, they grind just long enough to make some money, then tune out, doom scrolling, binging shows, chasing quick dopamine hits. And we look at that and say, what a waste. That's irresponsible. You can't live like that. You're not maintaining the world properly. But what if that is maintaining the world properly? Maybe it's those of us obsessed with progress who are actually destroying the world. And of course, we are. With our relentless work ethic, our need to control everything, we've had incredible success. We've cured diseases, extended lifespans. But where does it all lead? In the end, we build the ultimate weapon to wipe it all out. Meanwhile, the people who step back, the ones we call unambitious or lazy, are looking at us and saying, "Your problem is, you don't even know what you want. You keep chasing some future paradise, but you never arrive. You're all feast and no satisfaction. You keep promising yourselves the good life is coming, but it's always just out of reach. An endless cycle of promises with nothing real to hold on to. Even your money is just a promise. Look at a dollar bill. It literally says that the US Treasury promises to pay $1. But what does that even mean? If you walked in and said, "All right, I'll cash this in. Give me what this dollar truly represents. All they'd give you is more credit, because it's just paper, just symbols. And this is why so many so-called primitive cultures, Amerindians, Mexican indigenous people, Africans, don't fully engage with us, and we don't engage with them. Not because they can't communicate, but because they don't want what we keep selling as the ideal society. Some do, of course. Look at Japan. The Japanese have been completely sold on the Western way of life as the model for success. But at what cost? And so, they've become frantic industrialists, chasing the dream we sold them. And what's the result? Cities like Nara, Osaka, and Kobe choked in smog. Tokyo, a chaotic, overcrowded pressure cooker. They got exactly what we promised. And for what? The whole point is, the future is an illusion. In Hindu cosmology, time moves through cycles, yugas, where things start in a golden age and slowly decay. It's a way of saying, over time, everything falls apart. Nothing lasts. So the lesson? Step outside of time. Get off the wheel of samsara, exit the rat race. And that's the core of what I call the politics of diversion. Divert the Western mind from the illusion of history. The belief that we're on a straight path to something better and better, when in reality, we're just accelerating toward more destruction. Shift people away from time itself by embracing a way of life that is timeless, a life more fulfilling than one spent endlessly chasing the future. This doesn't mean rejecting technology. In fact, technology gives us the power to eliminate poverty entirely. But we can't approach it with the same old mindset, where history is just a ladder of progress. That's the trap. The real power lies in using technology without being trapped in time. As long as we keep viewing progress through a historical lens, it will never work. The real issue isn't technological, it's psychological. The entire problem of money and wealth distribution isn't about resources, it's about how people think. We're hypnotized by money, treating it as if it has intrinsic value rather than recognizing it as just a symbol of wealth. It's the same old confusion, mistaking money for gold. When Ramakrishna said that gold was one of the evils of the world, he may not have realized just how right he was. There's a story that, once upon a time, the world's banks got tired of constantly shipping gold from country to country. So they came up with a solution. They established a central headquarters on a remote Pacific island where all the gold would be stored in one place. Instead of physically moving it, they would just adjust the books and trundle the gold a few feet whenever necessary. The system worked flawlessly for about 10 years. Then one day, all the top bankers from around the world decided to hold a grand convention on the island, bringing their wives and children along. They inspected the books, reviewed the transactions. Everything was in perfect order. Or so they thought. At last, the children said, "Daddy, can we see the gold?" The bank president smiled and turned to their managers. "Take the children down to the vault. Show them the gold." But the managers hesitated. "Well, it's complicated. It's not that simple. It would take a lot of time." The presidents frowned. "Don't be ridiculous. What's the problem? Just let them see the gold." After some awkward shuffling and nervous glances, the managers finally confessed. "Well, the truth is, 7 years ago, there was a massive underground earthquake. The vaults collapsed and all the gold was swallowed up. But don't worry, we kept track of exactly how much was there at the time, so the books are still perfectly in order." And that's the joke. Most people don't realize that money isn't real wealth. It's just bookkeeping. And because of this, the entire concept of taxation is completely outdated. The real thing choking the world's wealth isn't a lack of resources, it's our fixation on money. Instead of taxing people, we should be doing the opposite, issuing credit. Not debt, credit. But to make it work, that credit must stay balanced with the actual productivity of the economy, tied to real goods and services, not just numbers in a system. If we did that, money would finally flow freely, and people could actually exchange the value they create, instead of being trapped in an endless cycle of scarcity and restriction. Otherwise, we end up in the absurd situation where people are starving in India while we hoard food, burn surplus crops, and dump excess into the ocean, all in the name of stabilizing markets. It's pure insanity. But it's not a resource problem. It's a psychological problem, a mental block about money. In Indian philosophy, this kind of illusion is called Maya, a false reality we've bought into. And it's the same illusion that keeps us chasing the future, believing that real life is always just ahead of us. But if that's how you live, then no matter how far you go, you'll never actually arrive. You'll always be reaching, always wanting, always deferring life itself. You become like a donkey chasing a carrot, tied to a stick that's always just out of reach, running in circles, never realizing the joke is on you.